then I always had small firms from then on, but I interacted when I was with larger firms all the time with the major brokerage houses, and I observed all the things that they were doing. In those days, options didn't come into being until 1973, 74, and so that was something very, very new at the time. And they weren't doing things like securitizing securities and things like that. That sort of thing really didn't exist. Life in the brokerage business was much simpler than that. But, I could see all of the little things that they were getting away with by skating down the edge, and especially in the big firms. The SEC would come in and say, well, and a wink and a nod and he's gone, And so then I knew that the SEC and the CFTC were in the back pocket of Wall Street.
Now, everything that you've just said is pretty, common knowledge. I mean, nobody really thinks about Goldman Sachs or any or Bank of America being criminal operations, but information is starting to come out now that hey, these guys are laundering money. They're working with the drug dealers, and of course the bailout was to me was simply they just walked in and robbed the bank of $2 trillion and said, oh, it's okay because we're the Federal Reserve. We're too big to fail here. What kind of information were you putting out back then that started these intelligence agencies that you had worked for to come after you? What were you saying? What information didn't they want you to that they didn't want you to get out?
Well, most of it was economic and financial, although some of it was political. And I wrote articles for the American Mercury about how, and this was in 1967 to 1970, on how the American economy was going to be destroyed by what is now called today free trade, globalization, offshoring, and outsourcing. I had it nailed as far back as then. And but I used to be involved outside of work with different organizations, and that's what really got them going, because they were very conservative, and also we had shooting groups and stuff like that, and probably precursor to militias. The militias didn't exist at that time. They did about 20 years later. And so I was sort of in the vanguard of some of the things you've seen in the last 15, 20 years. And they didn't like me for that either. I used to plant people in our gun club, if you could believe that. And all we did was go out and shoot at targets,
I helped start the militias, and at least the ADL gave me credit for that in New Mexico. And I was listed in their little hate brochures, Armed and Dangerous. They came after me, and with Oklahoma City, they came after the militias countrywide. The militias, nobody I knew in Christian identity or the militias were in any way violent. I mean, the only thing we wanted to do was defend ourselves, defend our neighbors against any type of unwarranted aggression like Waco. And suddenly it was the ADL that came after me. This is a Jewish group coming after me, and I had no idea what the connection was between any Jewish groups, especially something like the ADL. Why would the ADL get upset with me for exercising our Second Amendment rights? And the reason I'm bringing this up, I just had Ralph Epperson on. Are you aware of who Ralph Epperson, Unseen Hand, is?
Mm-hmm.
I just had him on, and he's got a new DVD out. that says, oh, this talk about Jewish involvement, Jewish conspiracy is all wrong. I've done the research, I've studied it. This conspiracy is 5,000 years old, and it ain't Jewish. And everybody's entitled to their opinion, but in my research, and the whole idea that the ADL, who I'd never heard of, suddenly came after and tried to make me out and to be a criminal, and they're doing the same thing. The ADL and the Southern Poverty Law are doing the same thing to groups like Oath Keepers and the Tea Parties. They're trying to paint them as racist. I mean, that seems to be their favorite. They got two buzzwords. Well, you're a racist or you're anti-Semitic, and either way, you're obviously you're anti-New World Order, and we don't like you, and we're going to do everything we can to stop you. Is Epperson, and
Well,
I agree with Epperson to the point that the Masonic lodges have been involved in a great work for many years, and if that great work is one world government, they're certainly doing their job. Where are we supposed to look if we're trying to identify who is responsible for this push for one world government, one world banking of the one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers? And that's the way I see it. Where are we supposed to look, Bob?
well, I think the people who will take the time can look at the history, and his book, among many others, you could read, but this goes back 1,000 years that we know about, and it's the evolution of the royal families of Europe, the banking and economic systems. It has a great deal to do with the planned wars that have gone on for centuries, financed on both sides by the same group of people. Then you have the play that comes in from the Knights Templars, as well as via the Masonic organizations that evolved over time, and how they work very closely with the nobility in furthering the aims of control of people, and of course control of money. And once you can understand that, and this is what really gets me, because the average letter writer either doesn't know or doesn't care. I'm talking about newsletter writers like myself, and many authors as well. And if they do find out, they won't touch it. And in order to understand what's going on in the world, and particularly about the different events that are happening that are very important, and the control of money and power, you have to study that history. You have to understand it. You have to know it. You know it, although you don't specialize in it, because your involvement with what you've been involved with for many years, and myself as well. I happen to be an expert at it. And that's why I do radio programs, especially at this late stage in life. It's because I want people to know who's doing what to them and why they're doing it, and how they want to enslave them. And so if you can understand all those things, you can get a handle on it, and people like you and I stick our necks out. And we pay for it, and that's okay. It's a cost of doing business. And I'm every bit as affected from where I am in the places I've been over the last 10 years or so as I would be in Chicago, because of communications today. You don't have to be anywhere unless you're a manufacturer. And so you find people all over the world who are publishing or creating and delivering some kind of service. And so that makes those kind of people, like me, difficult to corral, especially when you know how to disappear, which I do, obviously. and we have all sorts of stopgap